Hey everybody, welcome to my favorite shitty movie. Very excited tonight. If you're a shitty movie lover, you know who John Waters is. And tonight, our guest Leo Foti. He's a writer director who I had occasion to work with recently. He's wonderful, and he brought in this movie, and I hadn't seen it since it was in the theater, which I saw in the theater because at the time I saw everything that Kathleen Turner is in, and it was so much fun to watch it again. This is one of those movies that people sometimes go, "Oh, how dare you call it shitty?" But I think that John Waters himself would love the fact that this movie is being talked about on a show called My Favorite Shitty Movie. He gets it. John Waters gets it. Speaking of shitty movies, I just want to do a shout out before I bring Tracy up to one of our great fans and a contributor to the show, Jeff Luce. He had a birthday the other day, and for his birthday, he got me a couple of movies. One's called Blood Bite, and one's called Snow Monster versus Ice Shark. They're foreign films, Chinese films, English dubbed. I watched both of them already, and they're wow, they're exactly shitty. It's kind of amazing when you watch a movie that has that cheesy English language dubbing in it, and it's like, I'm not sure this is actually taking away from the experience. I think it might be worse if the actual actors were heard. But I highly recommend these movies, especially the Snow Monster versus Ice Shark. I didn't even know there were ice sharks. They swim under the ice and they come up out of the ice. It's terrifying. Ladies and gentlemen, someone who always has stuff like this to show, I guess, is my great co-host. She's a producer and a genius and a font of cinematic knowledge. Her name is Tracy Mercer. Here she is.
Oh, thank you, Todd. Oh my God, ice sharks. That's amazing. Like I want to see that and like the Meg franchise like together. Like cross that over, everybody.
Yes, please. Yes, a Meg Ice Shark and Ice Meg.
Yes, Ice Meg.
We just figured out what the asylum's doing next week.
Oh my God, you're welcome. Thank you. We're here for you. Oh my God, I'm super stoked. Like I've definitely fallen into the category. Like you, I saw Serial Mom in the theaters. I actually saw it twice in the theater.
Did you go because it was John Waters, or did you go because it was Kathleen Turner, or Matt Lillard? Was it Matt Lillard?
It was definitely definitely not Matt Lillard. No, I love Kathleen Turner. I think she's incredible. I think this is like, I mean, she in a career full of great performances. I think this is one that really stands out. I love that she was game to do this. And I grew up loving John Waters films. I'd go to the Tower Records, this is the Midnight Madness section. You weren't supposed to rent, so of course I did. And yeah, it's like, Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, all that good stuff.
I didn't see any of that stuff till I was in college.
Okay.
And well, I was shocked when Divine ate dog shit.
Yes.
Pink Flamingos.
It remains striking.
It's one of the most nauseating things I've ever seen.
It's just, there's something about John Waters because, again, I love everything about him. It's like, okay, it's Baltimore. I'm the Pope of bad taste. He loves music. Yeah, I've been, the last 2 years into Oakland. He does Mosswood, which is kind of John Waters' curated punk show where he puts like old, new, acts that are breaking in all together. And each band he writes in only a way John Waters can, a brilliant introduction that is laced with witticisms and lots of profanity and trashy, fun, good things. What I loved about this, and I was excited to see it, Kathleen Turner is still a favorite actress of mine, and I couldn't believe that Waters got studio financing to make a John Waters movie, and that he got Kathleen Turner, like a really big star, to top line. And he's always been doing his own stuff. I mean, there was a recent, if you live in Los Angeles, there was a LACMA exhibit that really talked about the totality of his work, how he started when he was writing his drawing his own posters, and he had like the log of like his budget in pencil for every line. I mean, this guy was meticulous, and he just did everything himself. The great Mink Stoll has always been with him. She makes a return appearance in this one. But I had this feeling watching it again, last night, getting ready for the show. I hadn't seen it in a few years, but it's one that I do love. This would never get made at Universal today. And I feel like we've been starting to do more 90s movies lately. Like we typically are Gen Xers, so we stick to 80s a lot, or kind of.
There's literally an action movie called 1992 coming out.
Yes, which is freaking me out. I think you've got the great acting stylings of Tyrese and I'm
Gibson. He uses the last name now, I think.
Right, so now he's legit. It's like Dwayne Johnson. He's not The Rock. I get it. I'm sure his performance will be fabulous. He's so handsome, that guy. But yeah, I think this is kind of one of those movies where I felt a little nostalgic for a time where Universal would take a swing and say, we're going to get the anti-establishment, Pope of Trash himself to direct a picture, because they got Kathleen Turner. And I had read a little bit, and I remember when this film first came out, Turner gave quite a few interviews about it. And I used to read everything she did because she was so fun. And she talked about how everybody in her life, professionally, managers, agents, lawyers, publicists, do not do a John Waters film. It will end what's left of your career. And she's like, but I like his movies. This is a fabulous script. What a great role. And it was like this era where everyone from like Julie Andrews to Glenn Close were talking about as possible serial mom leads. And I think I love those ladies. I think Kathleen Turner's so perfect, and it's such a great performance. I can't imagine anybody else inhabiting this role. And anytime you have an actor, I think with the layers that Kathleen Turner does, leaning in to this level of craziness, it is a joy to watch. I just think if you don't get a thrill watching Kathleen Turner have the time of her life in this movie, I can't help you. Like, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Narratively speaking, it's sort of like a lady falling down. Or God Bless America, because the people.
That's fun. Yeah,
it's hilarious. I mean, the people that she kills are like doing fashion don'ts. That's too much.
And we should also point out, because it's easy maybe to forget now, but this film comes out in 1994. In 1995, you get O.J. Simpson, and the publicity of true crime, celebrity killers, selling merch, people having all these opinions. So in a way, this film is predictive. Also in 1995, you get Great Seven by David Fincher, where you are asked to perhaps uncomfortably so identify with John Doe, not his methods, but that last scene in the back of the car when Brad and Morgan are driving him out to the desert for the Wrath reveal. And you've got Kevin Spacey as John Doe going, wait, I'm the problem? Let me remind you who I just took off the planet, pedophile, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, he's making a good argument. And I think what's great about Waters is a year before all that comes out, here he is casting somebody who got an Oscar nomination just a few years before for Peggy Sue Got Married as this suburban housewife. Everything looks very Stepford and very great in Baltimore. And she just, you know what? You wronged my daughter. You wronged my son. You didn't rewind your videotape. You were wearing shoes after Labor Day. And it's like, so it's this thing, but the way people react to the crazy and the murders and that, I'm not so sure this film didn't predict the mess that we find ourselves in right now.
Yeah, you're right, because everybody's really into her as a serial killer. Before we get too deep, let's bring Leo on.
Let's do it.
Leo Foti, writer director. He directed a feature film called In Vino with Ed Asner, and as well as a short film that hasn't really been released yet, but I'm in it. So you should be excited about it. Maybe we'll look at a trailer in a moment. Here he is. Welcome, Leo.
Leo, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, man.
Great to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. Before we get into the Serial Mom, tell everyone what the game is. Tell us about the game.
The game, it's the darkest thing I've ever done as a writer-director, and it is pretty dark. I usually tend to gravitate more towards comedy and things that are funny and light-hearted. But I don't even know where this came from. I remember editing the film. I was in bed, and my husband was next to me, and then I finished the first cut of it, and I showed him a little piece of it, and he turns to me, he's like, Leo, you're screwed up. What's wrong with you? I wrote it. I know, which I am, to be fair. But, I wrote it a few years back, and it was something, I haven't done a short in a million years, and trying to get a bunch of things on its feet, but I had it in my drawer, and then the strike hit, and nobody was doing anything, and we were all itching to get something creative going, and when it seemed like it was going on forever, I finally thought, okay, well, it's time to at least try to get something moving, to get some of my creative friends and their juices flowing. And I was able to put together some finances, and the one thing that I could accomplish during that time was to make a short, which turned out to be, almost 30 minutes, which is a longer short. I called it a mini movie. So I gathered together all the best people I knew, and we had a lot of fun, very little time, making a story that is a little, I don't know if we can say the F word, but effed up.
You can say the
Yeah.
F word.
It's a little
Trying to say it's fucked up. Yeah.
But it was
Actually,
fun.
all right. I'm going to show everybody the trailer.
Yay!
So they understand just what you're talking about. The trailer is so dark and fucked up. Here it is.
Out of here. Filthy rich or dead.
Nice.
It's so scary.
That's cool. That's a good trailer.
Thank you. I was. Oh my God.
My only note is more Todd Anderson. That's it. That's my only. Yeah.
No, he gets a lot of. He's got one of the hardest jobs in the short, because he had to really to come from a place of vulnerability in such an fucked up situation, and really, if his character was so pivotal, because the short is about a game of Russian roulette, right? And so he's the first one to play. But if he had to bring it in a way that if we didn't care about these people, then we wouldn't care about anything that would happen in the movie, right? So he really had to find a way to kind of like bring his heart to it, so that we would grab onto these people. And it was really his job, his character's job, although he's the first one to peace out. It was really the two part. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Aww.
And he had the funnest on-set special effect to play with, because we had to squirt blood out of his brains, and it was an endeavor, and it was fun.
Yeah, it was. I like doing stuff like that. It's great. So, Serial Mom, Leo, to get us started, tell us how you define a great shitty movie, what that means to you, and how this figures into that.
Dude, ever since you proposed this question to me, I'm thinking, like, how do you define a shitty movie? Because I love what you guys are doing, because you're actually shining a light on some pieces of filmmaking that somehow don't get to be called the greatest movies, right? They're not the movies that you can't do without, the things that you think, oh, Sunset Boulevard, the world, the film industry would have been different without that movie. So these movies that we're talking about, I guess, or this one, I think if nobody ever made it, we wouldn't have missed it. It's not something that, this has made history, and thank God this movie was made, because it opened up to, it's not a Stanley Kramer movie that that goes to Hollywood conscience, but it's my favorite. It's one of my favorites because these are still films that manage to capture our being in some way, whether it's for fun or for so many aspects of it that make it so enjoyable and give us the performances of some of the actors that we love the most. And on a technical level, if you go and look at the practical nature of the script, is not a great filmmaking endeavor in so many ways. At the same time, it's one of my favorite shitty movies because I watched them more than 4 or 5 times, at this point. So, I'm a fan, and, I hate it to sort of like, I like John Waters a lot. So I'm like, oh, shit, I hope I'm not offending anybody. But again, I think the definition would be a movie that if it wasn't made, nobody would have really missed out on something huge. This is not, it's not true romance, but
like what you're saying is it doesn't matter in the overarching cinematic history.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm glad that Serial Mom does exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that it actually does inform cinematic history in a way that, the obvious ones, might not, because it's so, it's microcosmic of the time it was made. And John Waters is always, even in his most debauched form, is always making a comment. All of his movies are comments on society, and they all have kind of similar things. And the obsession with stardom, I think, is a big one. And the way he plays with it in this, to be honest, I went to this movie to see when I first saw it, which was before I'd seen like Pink Flamingos and Female Trouble and all that stuff. So, and I saw it because I was a Kathleen Turner fan. So I was like, oh, this guy's a maverick and he likes to be inappropriate, and, and I'll be laughing my balls off the whole time I see it. So I was disappointed the first time because it wasn't like it's not really, there's a few laugh out loud moments, but for the most part, it's not that. But it's all the time amusing.
It's also, and I like this about Waters films. I think John Waters makes films for himself, and the people who get his films are fans, and they cult, and they get it. And over 4 or 5 decades now, this man has consistently, he likes to push the needle into bad taste. He jokes about being the Pope of trash, but he always has something to say. And I think this is such a big swing. And I love the idea that as late as the 90s, or at least 94, somebody who had made cult midnight movies was given a studio budget with a bona fide movie star, Academy Award nominated actress, and really made a comedy slasher black commentary on the weirdos are the suburbs. The weirdos might be your preachers and the woman next door and all the people you think are normal, and the weirdos are really the people who are speaking the truth and doing it. And Kathleen Turner, you could read this as she's just a really protective mom. She's taking out horrible people in a way that perhaps we want to. And I think he has a lot to say, and I do think it's predictive before really reality TV. I mean, we had hard copy and crap like that on television, but we weren't quite TMZ. We weren't social media. We weren't 24/7 celebrity overkill. And I think that this came out, had it come out after O.J. Simpson a year later, I wonder if people, I mean, he's making jokes about, I wish they would have done the merch for Hinckley. Oh, did I see you at the Kennedy thing? I mean, he's like, we're going here. But like, it's bad taste, but it's true. And I think now, I mean, if you look at the top podcasts, most of them are true crime.
I know. I thought about that exact thing. I was like, everybody's loved. Yeah.
And even how he played it, where at the beginning he actually has this announcement, this this is a true story. The character has been, the names have been changed. It wants to give us that feel of you're about to see something true, which is, the great part of it is that wants to take us into this, and that's what I love about, in general, the comedies that are surreal, that have that vibe of surrealism, that it still managed though to land some real kicks to life as it is, and comedy is supposed to do that anyway, to just really give it a nice kick in the face of our own flaws. So,
Yeah, and it's that's sort of what I'm saying about the like comic energy and pacing of Serial Mom versus at the time what I was used to. When you went to see a comedy, it was generally dumber. So this, and I think John Waters, especially his like studio features like this and Crybaby and Cecil B. Demented,
right,
like work really well on repeat viewings, which is definitely true about his old cult stuff, but it's like you have to be on board with that right out of the gate, otherwise you're not going to watch it again. But these ones, like, you watch the first time and however you react to it, because it's weird and it's not necessarily the norm and what you're used to. So when you watch it again, you're like, oh shit, I get it. It's very, like the Coen brothers are like that. And, a lot of filmmakers are like that. I definitely think John Waters' studio stuff it's repeat viewing material. The more you watch it, the more you're going to get and the more you're going to process and the funnier you'll think it is.
Yeah, and you discover more and more moments. I was watching it again yesterday just to sort of refresh my memory of now that I was talking to you about it. And then I kept rewinding on Kathleen Turner chirping like a bird. I did watch it 4 times. It's so perfect. It's so fun. She is committed 100%. As she
awesome. Yeah.
How do you get that? And especially if you think about her position, in the industry at that time, she was one of the hottest shots. I read somewhere that Michael Douglas tried to talk her out of actually making this movie. That it would have been a bad career move for her, and I'm glad she had the balls to actually.
Yeah, because this isn't light fare like War of the Roses.
No. And also,
why would he try to talk her out of this? It doesn't make sense.
I think this is the context though, right? It's like Waters is a cool, proud, he calls himself a queer filmmaker. And so for me watching this movie, and I remember taking my mom to this. It was like a couple of weeks before Mother's Day, and I was like, "Oh, we gotta go see this." Mom was like, "What the hell?" But like, there was something so straight about Waters doing Serial Mom. Although, if you're a gay audience, it plays on a certain level, and it didn't connect. I mean, it made $8 million total, so it didn't succeed at the box office. But now is cult, and now is really highly regarded. But I think he was trying to figure out that safe space, and from what I had heard, he had a lot more gore in his first cut, and the dark comedy is very dark. I mean, he makes jokes that, probably inappropriate theater for many. And the studio freaked out, and they really were not happy with the cut. And allegedly, to try to force the filmmaker to make some changes, they tested it in front of a kind of conservative audience in a conservative neighborhood. Of course, they hated it because they're basically being made fun of, right? So Waters said, "I call shenanigans. I'm going to test this in Los Angeles for people who actually I made this film for, and we're going to get a real test rating for the people who I think will pay to see this," right? And so he does. And the studio was like, oh my God. And then not only is Kathleen Turner cool enough to ignore everybody and say, I'm going to work with John Waters because he's an auteur and I like his work and he needs me and I want to work with him. We love that. But she was friends with Liz Smith, like old school movie stars, right? Used to have relationships with gossip columnists, like Hedda Hopper back in the day, right? Luella Parsons back. So here you have Kathleen Turner calling up her friend Liz Smith, one of the head gossip columnists. She's like, hey, I need your help. Studio's giving my boy, Mr. Waters, a hard time here. I need you to, I'll set up a screening. You watch what we've done. I think it's really different for me. It's really different for him. Liz, also a gay writer, watches the film, loves it. Liz Smith pens an article saying, leave Serial Mom alone, and endorses Turner, endorses John Waters' film. And then all of a sudden the pressure that gossip columnist that everybody read freaked out Universal, and they said, I guess we're going to go ahead and release the one that he wants to do. And so like you had, not only was she cool enough to star in it, she was cool enough to have John Waters back when the studio was like, no. And that kind of creative artistic collaboration between an actor and a director, like you pray for that because I think interesting work, if not brilliant, at least something interesting is going to come out because they were on the same page. And so I just think hats off to the great Kathleen Turner for having the balls to do this, do it so beautifully, and then to fight for it when it wasn't cool either, you know. And I think, you know, after 100 years from now, this film will still be talked about.
I think so. And, you know, and I think, you know, you made a good point earlier on at the beginning of the podcast when you said, you know, this movie would never be made today in a studio system. And so it's very interesting how it came out and how it all came to be. And I think you're right. And, you know, Kathleen Turner, without her, it wouldn't have been what it is today. And she's got, you know, I have so much respect for an actor like that. And she's about the work, and she's the real deal. And still today, you know, kicks some asses and to do what she does. It's very cool.
I saw her in a stage production in Boston of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Oh, wow.
And I've never, it was either late in high school or early in college. You know, maybe I was back over the summer or whatever. But I remember just like, I was like in the third row, and the whole time it was like, in awe of Kathleen Turner. Actually, everybody in the play was really good. Had that guy from Hardcastle McCormick, you know, with the curly hair.
Curly hair.
Yeah, the dad from Cujo. It had him. He was really good as Brick. But in any event, yeah, she like blew me away. Like
I met her once
on stage. So often when you see movie stars in their Broadway shows or touring shows or whatever that come out of their stardom, they're not good. They don't inhabit the stage. But Kathleen Turner knows what medium she's working in all the time. And that to me is one of the most impressive things about actors. If they can adjust their thing for whatever medium.
Yeah.
You know.
Jimmy Radasta, longtime fan of the program. Kathleen Turner once invited me to her hotel room. He had the pleasure, I think, Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, of driving her for a Planned Parenthood event when she came to Portland. He can fill in more in the comment. I also had the great good fortune of seeing Kathleen Turner on stage. She came to LA with Bill Irwin, and they did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and she was Martha. And I thought, why? Like, I'm at that place where you're never going to be better than Mike Nichols directing Burton and Taylor, so why bother? That's why I started there. And then I saw Kathleen Turner as Martha, and I thought, my God, like, she actually made me forget about Elizabeth's take, which is brilliant, but she did her own thing with Martha with the same script, but like she brought her special star quality to it. And you know, she was a little older and had a little more weight on her than the Sex Goddess Body Heat era, and she leaned into that with Martha. And I thought, my gosh, she's so good. And she also was the Molly Ivins show at the Geffen a few years back. Flawless. I mean, she really has the dramatic chops, the comedic chops, and I think sometimes the best dramatic actors, I don't know why people keep acting surprised, but they give great comedic performances. You know, I much prefer Jim Carrey in a Truman Show than I do the dumb stuff. You know?
I think in America, I mean the United States of America, people are more surprised by that because you know, for decades we've, like, when a dramatic actor is transitioning into comedy, that means Arnold Schwarzenegger is doing Twins.
Right.
You know,
right.
It means The Rock is the Tooth Fairy. And that's
good story. He was staffing Kathleen Turner for a Planned Parenthood keynote visit in 2016. When she learned that Ted Cruz was dropping out of the race, she wanted to watch his concession speech together. Okay. I didn't think it was possible to love her more. Now I do. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yes, there you go. I met her once. I met her once in passing, like just shook her hand. Literally, I was rehearsing in a rehearsal studio here in Hollywood, and she had booked the room next door. I don't even know what she was working on. She was there with another actor, and you know, we crossed paths in the hallway, and I had to say hi because I was such a huge fan. I said, Miss Turner, it's such an honor to meet you. She said, thank you, darling. And she shook my hand. But then this place had paper thin walls. So I was in the next room, and I spent my entire time listening to Kathy. I mean, her voice carried over like, miles.
One of the
So
great
oh
voices.
my God, it's so amazing. And it wasn't like, I know I to myself, it was like before every recording device was available. I mean, I had a cell phone, but you know what I mean? It's not something that had it been today, I'd probably have a voice recording of Kathleen Turner next door rehearsing whatever it is that she was doing. It was such a thrill, though. But also to see, especially back then, I was a young actor, to see a pro like that, and I don't know what she was prepping for, but she, to go out and do the work and book a room and get on, on her feet, and it was so inspiring for me to see somebody that would just continue to, and that to what you're saying, you're thinking of somebody that, she was gorgeous to begin with, an ingenue that was set to do roles just based on her, yes, her talent, but her amazing looks, but her work is what made her relevant, and what made her career as long and meaningful as it is today. So
yeah, and I feel like, and I think that's a really good point. I think women, I mean, she's stunning. She's absolutely gorgeous. Still, then, always, forever. But I do think when you come out at like your big introduction to the cinematic world is 1981, right? Lawrence Kasdan's directorial debut, Body Heat, which is essentially a very thinly veiled, not official, but totally official, remake of Double Indemnity. And she plays the great Maddie Walker, right? Who's setting up William Hurt in that film. And she's so at ease. Like, the camera loves her because she's beautiful, but it's her first movie and she's carrying this film. And she has these great throwaway lines where she's the sexy, femme fatale. But I remember there's this little detail where she gives William Hurt's character, was it Ned Racine, a fedora hat as a wink to, Double Indemnity. And she's like, oh, I got you something. I got you a hat. And he's like, oh, and she's like, I bet I got the size right. And she just throws that line away. Like, yeah, you're not so smart, fella. I got your, and she's this gorgeous like thing. And you're like, who is this? And then Douglas was smart enough to put her in Romancing the Stone in 1984. So just 3 years after, Body Heat, where she's the sex goddess, she gets to be, I'm Joan Wilder. I'm this kind of nerdy. I write at home and I don't know, and she gets to talk about a range. She gets to do everything. And it's a wonderful script. The great late, Diane Thomas writing. And you're like, wow. But then I think probably why a lot of us fans love her, she does something so straight and wonderful and commercial like Romancing the Stone, but she's not afraid to work with the crazy, wonderful Ken Russell in something like Crimes of Passion, where she plays China Blue with a very sicky Anthony Perkins. And she is very sexually provocative. It would have been NC-17 if that rating existed yet. And she's not afraid to do that. So she can do a Ken Russell hardcore, I would argue, for its time, sex film, Romancing the Stone for the multiplexes, Body Heat to titillate people in an R-rated kind of way, but then she can do something with John Waters. And I feel like, okay, talk about range. Yeah. A lot of pretty ladies don't make smarter decisions because they keep trying to do the sexy thing. She's going to be sexy because she shows up, right? But she shows her range in all kinds of genres. And even when she does something kind of dour, like in The Accidental Tourist, she's totally believable as somehow, despite the fact that Kathleen Turner reuniting with William Hurt and Lawrence Kasdan writing and directing. And I love that there was a moment in the 80s and 90s when she was the right age to get these leading roles where we afforded women on the big screen that kind of nuance, that kind of genre flipping. It's why I love Sigourney. It's like, yeah, she's doing Polanski's Death and Maid. Now she's with Ivan Reitman and Dave. Now she's doing Alien 3 with Fincher. Perhaps you saw Your Living Dangerous. Oh, and here she is with Mike Nichols in Working Girl. Hi. Let's do those movies again, because I know there's Kathleen Turners out there today. So, no pressure, Leo, but, when you do your films, let's get, we got to do this, because I'm so done with the Marvel shit.
I'm all about finding the actors that really have that power to have an artistic journey. It's not just this movie or that movie. And sometimes it's a lack of opportunity, as you're saying. Like, who's afforded the opportunity to start in a place and then transition? Another movie that I think really cemented her journey into what was next was The War of Roses. I think that made her become an adult somehow. Like we started to see her as this new force, that it was not this, gorgeous young thing that was so powerful. Now she was like this woman that was so powerful, right? It transitioned her a little bit, and Danny DeVito was so smart into really giving her full power in that movie, and to put her next to a Michael Douglas that, I mean, I like him and he's great in the film, but he does at times disappear next to her, rightfully so. I think that was the point.
But don't you think it's interesting as a director, like you pointed out, that Michael Douglas was like, oh, Kathleen, don't do this dark comedy thing with John Waters, but he had no problem putting her in the dark comedy War of the Roses for himself.
That's what I was saying before. Yeah,
it's interesting. You're like, why not?
If you're gonna do dark, I get to control it because I'm the prominent man in your life.
Maybe well, I mean, I think there is a difference between the two movies, that the Serial Mom is way more out there in the narrative and in how it's handled, and so I don't know, and I don't know Michael Douglas' personality enough to know that, but definitely I think I can see why an actor would reading a script like Serial Mom would pause for a second and say, oh, how is this going to be handled? Because it could really be a big miss, something as out there. Think of the chirping alone, like, you know what I mean? Like that could become a running joke, except she nailed it, and it's like boom.
I also think with Douglas, I mean, look, this guy was still pretending to be married to Gwyneth Paltrow in Hitchcock remakes in the 90s, right? Men get to age a little longer than everybody else, and we still pretend that they're there. But I think Kathleen Turner was, I think, probably in her 40s or late 30s or 40s. So she's in that zone of what is Hollywood going to do to someone who came on the scene as the sex goddess. Yeah. And I think in terms of the role, what she gets to do in this film, because I think John Waters really loves actors and he writes these great roles. I think she was savvy enough to say, yeah, I get that some of the humor might be purple and this and that, but who's giving me a script that gets me this kind of characterization where I get to have this much fun with a true auteur who I just like and I want to work with? Like, that's the best reason. Whereas Michael Douglas, he continues to do whatever if he wants to do. I think it's harder for women, and I think she was. It
certainly was back then.
I think she was smart to take this role and say, let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I want to change, and I think it's cool. But if we haven't,
that's a good point about Kathleen Turner. She was navigating her way through a place where women had little to no power, even as stars. I like to think it's a little bit different now, but that's a good point. We should have Leo, by the way, take us through the narrative. Leo, can you explain to the people what happens in this movie?
Yeah, as best as you can.
Yeah.
The title says it all. Anyway, if you think about it, she's this wonderful suburban mother who loves her family very much. And she is, the perfect example of, she makes breakfast for her entire family, and she makes dinner, and it's a perfect meatloaf, and she's got this life that is perfect. And then really quick within the first 5 minutes, you realize that she is prank calling people, terrorizing them, that she's got this whole other side to her that because things tick her off, somehow she gets ticked off by, and it could be the simplest thing. The brilliant first scene that kind of sets the tone is you see her at breakfast with her family and everybody's happy, and all of a sudden there's this one fly that starts to make its way around the breakfast table, and she is like, her whole focus changes to the fucking fly, and she grabs
it's so well shot too, the fly landing on a coffee cup, and then yeah,
perfect. That's one of the greatest title cards for my money in the history of cinema.
Yes, there you go. Yes, absolutely.
Smash Fly, written and directed by John Waters.
And so meanwhile she's educating her kids. We don't no gum on the house. Oh, we don't say that word. She's a double thing happening at the same time. So as the movie goes on, really quickly we realize that she is, because she gets ticked off by some things that happen in her neighborhood. And again, as you guys were saying before, sometimes it's actually the voice of some sort of reason. Like she has it against the neighbor that doesn't recycle. She has it against the woman that steals the parking lot. She has it against all these things that in theory she's right. except that she decides to take a very dramatic approach and to harass, bully, and kill people, you might add. And and so soon, quickly in the movie, we discover that side of her, and she goes to her kid parent teacher conference, and she doesn't like what the teacher has to say. And next thing you know,
I love all the references to Blood Feast, by the way.
Oh,
the way
yeah.
Blood Feast
Yes.
is used in this movie is so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm a Blood Feast fan, so yeah.
And the way actually the horror genre is carried throughout the film with the son who's an aficionado and all
Right.
that.
Yeah, it's very summer school. Matt
Yeah.
Lillard and his girlfriend are like
Yeah,
the two
very
guys
summer
in summer
school.
school. Yeah.
It totally is that. But I think it is fun. But it's like, even the first time she looks at the guy that Ricky Lake thinks is her boyfriend, which clearly isn't. Like,
Yeah.
Kathleen Turner plays this even in a still. She's
Oh, yeah.
like, I'm not having it with this
Not
tweet.
buying it.
Freaking
I love one of my favorite recurring jokes is how horny Ricky Lake is for every dude.
everybody. But also, it's like she's introduced holding up Village People. Like,
What is happening?
just in case you didn't know who John Waters was, y'all. Like, it's just he weaves this into a Universal movie. She's, I can get some money for this. It's like
Well, I think his vibe is that comes actually in the dialogue. The way the dialogue is written, especially for Kathleen Turner and for women in general in the movie, it's got this sense of these glorious, almost drag queenish in a way, if you think about it. And but they're beautifully, the lines are beautifully crafted, and it really sets the tone for, like, it's almost he's writing from Gloria Swanson. You know what I mean? It's like,
it is.
it's just so cool.
When
So
you think
cool.
that's a really good point, Leo. One of the things that I like about the movie, you said it so well. The women are written so as to outshine the men in the narrative, which I think is really smart. I think Sam Waterston is great as this ineffectual, like, I think
Yes.
I'm living the perfect life. But like, there's no way, and his performance is great, I think.
He's
But
a
it doesn't come close to the women in this movie are all delivered. I mean, like, Ricky Lake to me is so funny in this movie. Yeah, and obviously Kathleen Turner and Mink Stoll as well.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the John Waters stalwarts,
Absolutely. But I also, what I appreciated about it is that, Waters is quoting a lot of the horror filmmakers that he likes. Like, there's, the Joan Crawford and the William Castle Straight Jackets and things like that he interweaves flawlessly. But he even shoots some of these kills in the tradition of horror films, like the low angle on the car, and then this and that. And then all of a sudden, like, wait, you're at a high school PTA or whatever parent-teacher meeting, and you're doing this. And of course, what I also love about it is, like, the look is camp value, but of course, there's only one witness, and this is the beginning of, I think, Waters laying the thread. Right? It's the stoner.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, man. Like, it was a blue car. I don't know what kind of car it was a blue, and
It's
like,
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, and it's cool because, like, even she watches Kathleen Turner kill the teacher, and then she's like, she questions, is it me, or is it the joint, or am I really is this happening for real? It's so funny.
That's such a classic bit in TV and movies, is the person who's imbibing something or smoking something that maybe they shouldn't, and something crazy happens, and they look at the thing like, did I see that? Always. It's like, even in Disney's Aristocats, there's a joke where a guy sees cats chasing a dog, and he's like looking at his wine like, whoa.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yes, I remember
It's just, it's like, you can't fail with that bit. I've not seen anyone fail.
It's
Yeah.
it's funny because they're also, I think it's a commentary, because he clearly loves horror films, right? So in horror films, the rule, especially in the 70s and 80s, right? Or if you have sex, you're the first one killed, or you're something psychotic. But then in the middle of this, everything is so Squareville kind of thing. He throws this ridiculous sex scene in with Waterson and, like, Kathleen Turner just going for it. And you're like, I loved it. She's like, "Oh, hi, dear," and but she has this almost like kind of bewitched kind of presentation.
I was worried for Sam Waterston.
I know. I was like, she's gonna break something.
She's
Careful.
gonna crack something in half.
This is because he's so like tiny and frail, and she's this like Amazon woman that is so powerful that you really end up being worried about him for sure.
Totally.
But I think that makes so much sense if you think about it, because say what you want about it, but the character is so well constructed of her, of Beverly, and makes so much sense that she would have that side, that she has that sort of like sexual vibe that needs some expression, that sometimes it's the same source of her killing persona that also becomes this like
little detail that Waters puts in there. Like it looks like we established that she's a birder. She likes to watch, right? And so she's reading a bird book, except it's really like a Charlie Manson. Like it's probably Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
But like
it's like when you put Playboy in your Mad magazine in the 1980s.
Well, it's funny but I also love like the next morning, like post sex, right? She has her birder vest on, but she's inside the house. Yeah. Like these little details, right? And then it's like, oh, she's looking at the neighbor. What's the neighbor doing with the two copies?
Oh yeah, the neighbor was she on Different Strokes? Did she like take over for who played the Facts of Life lady?
Charlotte Rae?
Yeah, wasn't Charlotte Rae on Different Strokes, and then she left to do Facts of Life, and then that lady took over?
Ooh, I don't know.
Am I crazy?
I didn't watch Different Strokes. I'm terrible. Like Taylor was inspired by that. Oh my God, good call, Jeff Lewis.
Oh, in Spanglish,
yeah. Taya also very brave performance in that film. There's not an ounce of likability about that character. And Taya, again, beautiful woman like Kathleen Turner, leans against trying to be liked and just plays it as written. It's a good role.
Oh, she's not afraid of being.
No, it's a hateful character, but it's lovely to see an actress not be so vain and just go.
That's true about Leone. I think in general, she's not afraid to play characters who you might not like. For one way or the other. Maybe you just don't like them because why is she bringing these mercenaries to the island to save her kid from dinosaurs? I don't know.
I was rooting for the Raptors in Jurassic Park 3. I really did that at that point. I was like, I'm done with the situation.
But I'm just saying she's unafraid to play those characters.
She's just she's a cool lady. She's a cool actress. But there's a Kathleen Turner kind of tomboy coolness to both of them that I don't know. There's a fearlessness. And I think some of our best actors.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, it's certainly for the era of Serial Mom is Kathleen Turner always had sort of a tomboyish quality.
Yeah, sexy, but there was a little that voice.
She was sexy and she was a woman, but she could also kick the shit out of you like a man. So it was. I mean, that's probably why I was obsessed with her. I was like, oh, it's a powerful woman.
But she works for everybody. It's the classic thing of guys want to be with her and ladies want to have a drink with her. Like if you got that, you're a star.
Well, and some ladies want to just be with her as well.
That is a true story as well.
It depends on the lady.
It depends on the lady.
Where are we in this narrative?
Let's talk about this subplot, which I thought was brilliantly set up, Leo.
The recycle guys, the trash guy. She's friends with them because they actually end up and she's all about doing the right thing. So she recycles and she makes friends with them. And then there's this whole subplot of them and functioning as her eyes when it comes down to the neighbor who actually doesn't recycle and becomes, one of her targets that oh my God.
That's so great. She uses the invisible or underseen people, like the stoner. She knows she doesn't have to worry about her on the stand with the trial. The trash guys, they're going to help her out with the evidence. She turns everybody's quirk, against them to get herself off. But the way that Waters drops that into the narrative from day one is really clever because by the time you get to the end, you're like, oh my God, she has her friends and her support mechanism.
I also like that. Yeah, when those guys are introduced, she treats them to airplane bottles of booze, which they take and drink immediately.
Totally,
because they're garbage men, you guys.
Yeah. Well, it takes really a ability as a writer and a director to play stereotypes and not be cliche. It's really hard because we all, if you think about it, we all love a stereotype. It's like the joke that you were saying of the guy commenting on the smoke or the beer. You know, it's one of those things that you perhaps have seen a million times. But if you play it right, then it's not a cliche, and then you end up selling it, which it's a very hard balance. It's almost impossible as a director, which John Waters does.
You have to do so. I agree. You have to do something new with the stereotype. And I would say in this particular instance, she doesn't bring them cookies or some bullshit. She brings them booze.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that before.
But
And
also,
not just any booze, not just any booze. You know, the detail of making it like, you know, this specific thing that she saved up for them. It gives it a layer of reality. One thing too, if you think about it, because I had seen this movie back then a couple of times, right? And then I just kind of rediscovered it not too long ago. And the first time I rewatched it, I watched it with the eyes of a filmmaker. And as I was, you know, and not to say that I've forgotten some parts, but I was sort of reminding myself as I went, right? And oh my God, I keep hitting this mic. I'm sorry. The first part of the movie, it's really not divided in 3 acts. It's strange because it moves so quickly. Then I thought, okay, well, this is really happening fast to the point that there is really no halfway in. She's already killed a few people. She's already being discovered. She already has everybody on her tail. And then you realize as you go that the narrative is constructed to then lead to the trial. And that's such a big set piece that is not really the third act. It's actually, you know, the climax of Act 2, but it almost functions as a destination for the narrative. And everything is, you know, built towards that. So even in the way the narrative is constructed, it's taking some huge risks, but it really works in a way that it's outside of the lines of what you would expect. Yeah,
you're right. And it's funny because no one was thinking podcasts back in '94, but in a way now, I think Serial arguably kind of, was that like 5, 7, 8 years ago? I don't even know. Time is whatever after the COVID epidemic. But like Serial came on and everyone seemed to watch it. And it was like, this is a true story. And every episode it was like, oh, it's this person. Oh, wait, it's this. Oh, it's that. And it was really an investigative journalist look at, let me contextualize and try to frame this. And in a weird way, I think why Serial worked was there were these pivot points about, well, who could it possibly be? Whereas in this film, Waters is like, you know who it is, girl. Yeah. But here's the thing. I want to comment on the freaks. And the freaks are not who are traditionally the freaks. But in my movie, it's the straight people who are the freaks. And like my girl is kind of cool. So much so that like when they get to the point where she goes into like CL7, you know, and everyone's like, yeah, I'm like, that would totally happen today. That would totally happen.
Camel lips, they're called. Camel
lips with the best pants you've ever seen. But yeah, it's just, but like there's a joy to that. But also then there was a little detail, like if he's almost doing like Stepfordville, you've got these two, detectives, and they go to Sam Waterston, who plays the town dentist, right? But this little detail of like almost a war, like a pop art tooth behind him. That kind of stuff is intentional. Like there's so many subtle little details like that. Or like, let's get Tracy Lords in there, to look at a fake Franklin.
Was this the first time Tracy Lords was in a legit movie? I think so.
I think so. I mean,
she did Corman's remake of Not of This Earth, I think, after this. Yeah. And obviously Blade was after this. So
yeah, she was great in Crybaby. Like, I feel like, again, like Waters knew what to.
She was a fun actress. I liked her in all the things she showed up in.
But then there's the high camp factor, right? And I love that, Tracy Lords is now going out with the guy that, Ricky Lake thought she liked, but then the skewering of this loser in like the bathroom, but like it's the liver. I mean, it's the blood feast kind of callback reference.
Yeah.
Just really clever. And again, then he goes to William Castle's. I love that Straight Jacket is quoted.
Yeah.
It's just delightful. But then he also, I feel like it's the horror movie, tropes of like, oh, is there something in the closet? Is there something?
Hey, this scene. I have a clip of this scene.
Oh, you had the scene.
Oh my God.
I have the entire scene. All the parts are played by Hillary Anderson, my wife. She felt bad about not being in last week, so she's playing All 4 parts in this scene.
Okay.
Oh my
Here
god.
you go.
Ralph, Wheel of Fortune's on. Still eating.
Yay! Pavel, yay!
Come on, honey, before the kids get home.
Pavel, yay! Pavel, bang, yay!
Ralph! What is it, babe? We've got mice or something. No. We paid an exterminator.
Oh my god.
God, it's like Orphan Black if John Waters did it. That was amazing.
That is hilarious. Oh,
Hillary. I don't know. That might be the all time.
It was pretty good.
Right there.
It was pretty
Oh my
good. I had to end it on the masturbating teenager
Oh my
because
God. So
I just think the way he was, this kid was directed to do the masturbation under the blanket was ludicrous. That's not how you masturbate, you guys. That's dangerous. What he was doing is dangerous.
yes.
Oh my God. I love it. Jeff Luce is correcting us. Almost a dozen legit films to her credit before Serial Mom. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, wow.
So we should all look at the IMDb of it all. But you're saying that she committed murders before the first one we see in the movie.
That's
I
a
would
good
think
question.
that's a good question. I bet I don't think this just started. I think there's
Right.
probably some subtle.
Also, because it's so easy when she kills the teacher, the first victim we see, it's so like boom that you would assume that she probably done it before.
See, Jeff agrees. Definitely in the top 3 Anderson family.
Top
rating.
3. Oh,
Yeah.
man. What are the other 2? Am I in any of them? I did voice work in this. I just
I had it.
And we should point out that John Waters has an uncredited piece of voice work in Serial Mom,
Oh yeah.
which he listens to, allegedly listening to Ted Bundy. It's John Waters doing Ted Bundy.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm such a jerk. When I was watching this with Hillary, I was like, "Do you know whose voice that was?" I don't fucking know.
It's so good. It's so good. This movie gets out of control and we love it. Like she's throwing like air conditioners on like people. And then the next day it's like everybody at church, like, so her friends at church are like, hey, we love you. Everybody else is like, oh my God, she's a murderess. She's going into church. What is happening? And I love, again, poking the bear at establishment figures as John, Waters meets Ye. But here you've got this like, priest who's like, if Jesus was ever going to say the death penalty was wrong, capital punishment, probably when he was like, hung up on the cross. And he didn't say that, so I think we should go into the death penalty. And you're like, what?
What?
It's just like all of a sudden, it's so farcical. And I'm like, this is a Universal Pictures. Like, we need to give props that got in this movie because they're so afraid of offending everybody with everything. That's how you get Fast and the Furious Part 25.
But then again, I think you were touching on something earlier that I thought was very interesting because you said we know who the killer is from the get-go, right? And the thing about it that I was thinking is you also know she's gonna get caught, from the
Right.
get-go, because once it's some movies are written that way where okay, this is the killer. Is he going to be able to get away with it, or what's going to happen, or whatever. With this, she's so careless about it that that she's going to get caught, right? So it keeps you questioning. Okay, where is this going? If we know that somehow this is obviously going to, everybody knows who she is, and I think that's the brilliance of the trial scene where she manages to, do like a circus act and wrap it all around her finger and win.
But this is the genius of John Waters, because I think because you know who it is and he cast a movie star that you already love,
right?
You're kind of rooting for her. Everybody that she takes out as an asshole, which is why I really think this is the comedic version of Seven. And that I think John Doe actually has a good point. I think Serial Mom has a good point too. I just don't like their methods. But I feel like you have two auteurs doing completely different things. I mean, Seven was being filmed as this was being released, right? So there was something going on in the early 90s where we're kind of rooting for, maybe something.
Is it playing at all with the death wish fulfillment element?
Oh, yeah, I think that's fair. There's even a line of dialogue in Serial Mom, right, where they're buying merch, the Serial Mom merch. And she's like, I wish I could kill somebody.
It's almost making the death wish thing a little bit more realistic. And I like your point, by the way, that like right away we know she's guilty, and the cops show up right away.
Hey.
The cop character, it's not, they don't come in like so often in movies about a quiet killer, the cops don't show up till like halfway or 2/3, almost to the end of the film. They come up right away. So you're like, oh, where is this movie supposed to go?
Yeah, and I do think there's something about that like 90s kind of vibe. And it's funny because we talked about this. I know this is one of Todd's favorites, the Friday the 13th franchise, but I think we've had like 12, right? And a lot of people forget, I think the reason the first film worked so well, obviously writing the Halloween coattails, but they had a Paramount release so they can get into more theaters. So that was really helpful with a holiday themed horror film. But I think it's because Cunningham was really smart in terms of Friday the 13th. In the first film, you don't actually know until the end who's killing all these kids and exactly why. And it was the whodunit that was interesting. And I think minus that scene at the end, where, Adrian King's in the boat and comes out, and you think that, like, without that, I don't think you have a franchise. And so I think part of what part 2 was trying to do, and then the franchise to varying degrees in each installment finds or loses itself, depending on your point of view, because we know it's Jason. Now we know why Jason does this. And now he's a guy in a mask, or first a sack, then a hockey mask, and that changes. And he's a roided out guy. But there's something about the first one being a whodunit. And that's, to me, Halloween is given credit for launching the slasher phase, which of course John Waters is spoofing in this film, but really it's Friday the 13th. That's the slasher, not Halloween. And it's a slasher that's a whodunit. Waters is subverting that. It's a comedy slasher and we know whodunit. But I'm going to make you fall in love with her. And I think I want you to make sure you want her to get off. And that's the thing that's subversive, where the weirdos should be like free and get movie contracts if you're the son, and Ricky Lake gets a boyfriend and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the straight people, quote unquote, they all die or they're pawns and they're manipulated. And there's something that's a complete joyful, God, wouldn't it be great, for everybody who doesn't feel like they fit in. And I think that's John Waters' thing, right? He's like, we're the queerdos that don't fit in, and let's talk about that. And it's just joyful in a studio film that he was allowed that canvas,
That's amazing, actually, if you to think about that this was a studio film. It actually changes a lot of my thinking around it too. I never really thought about it that way. It's such a different perspective to think that this was a studio film, and
different time.
It says a lot about where our industry is now, which is fascinating. And when you have that kind of support behind you as a filmmaker, you really are able to nail things in such a better way. I remember watching an interview with Paul Feig about the Bridesmaids.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't laughed like that. And when I saw the movie, it was just like, it was a laugh out loud moment after another, and it was so brilliant. And then I saw this interview with him, and I remember right at the time I just finished doing In Vino, so I was just coming out with a very small independent comedy, and you're there trying to see what's going to work, what's going to get a laugh, what's going to be funny, what's not going to be funny, hoping that it lands with the instruments that you have, right? And I saw this interview with Paul Feig, and it was like, we tested the bathroom scene, he said, with an audience 3 times.
3 times.
And to have the structure, to see, and then they re-edited she's gonna vomit on that, and she's gonna shit on that, and how far can we go? How much do we have to pull back? What's too much? What's too little? When you have that kind of structure behind you, and even the story you guys told about the reaction of the studio to Serial Mom and how they were able to defend it and still get on board with it. That amount of support for a filmmaker and somebody that has a creative mission really makes a difference, which is why I feel like so many times independent films suffer from lack of that support. It's
Yeah, you're right. And I love that you brought up Bridesmaids, because I think that is actually one of the funny. I think Paul Feig is a genius. Actually, I love his Bridesmaids. Todd and I are in agreement. We love the Lady Ghostbusters. Haters can suck it. I think he does amazing. The Heat, for my money, it was another laugh out loud. Like, if you're not laughing at the Heat, like, there's a problem with you. Like, it's you. It's not the film. It's you.
Exactly.
Melissa McCarthy and Sandra Bullock for The Age. Okay, but there's something about even Bridesmaids, and just I'm thinking about the context of studio films and how much can we push with female leads, particularly. Right. I don't know that Bridesmaids gets made at Warner Brothers when it did, had The Hangover not worked. And I think they sold Bridesmaids as the female corollary to the boy Hangover, right? And so it was like from the producers of but I think had The Hangover not worked, I don't know that you get Bridesmaids, because we seem to have to remind people that women are funny and it's okay to laugh. And like every generation, there's like kind of a couple people. And I feel like Feig really knows how to write female protagonists between Lady Ghostbusters, The Heat, Bridesmaids, like just, that. But again, I think
like a lot of luck that came out of that season of SNL with all those fantastic women that were just a group that seemed to click together in such an amazing way. And so that power, I guess, was part of it too. But that's I was so excited that Melissa McCarthy got an Academy Award nomination and allowed for comedy to be mentioned, because comedy really, I think Marisa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny was maybe, as I can think, one of the only actors to get an Academy Award for a comedy role.
Very rare. I mean, Richard Dreyfuss for The Goodbye Girl. But that was a really
Kevin Kline got an Oscar for Fish Called Wanda.
Yes, that's right.
But I'm racking my brain thinking.
And anybody in a Woody Allen comedy, all the women who were.
The women in.
But that's rare,
But that's also different from comedy. It's yes, it's obviously it's a comedy, but it's so much more than that too. Like a Woody Allen movie becomes an author's movie, and.
Sure. But do they have scenes like this?
No, they don't.
Oh my God, this scene! Like, there's certain things that was the thing that I guess we should have closing thoughts about this, so we can do our end segs. But that was one of the things I thought about this movie, like the dog licking the toes. There's like a lot, and then there's a scene where the neighbor couple is eating chicken with the skin on. Like he takes these like mundane suburban things that happen all the time, and he makes them vile as possible. The chicken eating sequence is so disgusting.
When you establish her as a birder, and then you show the eating of the chicken that way, and the way he intercuts, I'm just like, this is so wrong. But you're like, oh my God, I can see why and like the one woman who's with the dog that's licking the feet is like, you didn't rewind your video before you brought it back to my son's, freaking job. So I'm killing your ass, and you're like, what? And the use of Barry Manilow's Daybreak, by the way, one of the best needle drops in the history of cinema. Fight me. It's so good. It's like everything about this is so calibrated. And there's a queerness to some of this stuff, but it works for a straight audience too. It's really, it's a very good film. But then you have this crazy shit with like Patricia Hearst as a juror wearing white shoes after Labor Day. Like, I don't like what? Like,
and that's worth killing. That's worth killing.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
then she destroys all the people who would do her harm. She decides to represent herself and is winking. I mean, look how much fun Kathleen Turner is having. I
But
mean,
that's the thing. That's the thing. I think that courtroom scene is what makes the whole movie work. If you think about it,
Yeah.
like from a narrative perspective, the fact that she takes charge at the end and she's able to use it all. Otherwise, the movie would really fall flat. I mean, it wouldn't fall flat for all these moments, but I'm talking about the narrative journey, because you wouldn't really know. You're halfway through the movie. Okay, now what? And the fact that now she's got her one-woman show and she's able to manipulate the entire world around her. And then she gets away with it. And then the first thing she does afterwards is she kills somebody. I mean, it's just like, wow.
but she said she knows the people who would testify against her. This sequence too, I have to feel when she gets this guy unnerved and she starts using her thighs. Like this is 2 years after Basic Instinct. You know, John Waters knows what he's
Yeah.
doing. And he's like,
Of
Kathleen, let's do a riff on Catherine Trammell right now. And it's but played for laughs. And it's so joyful. I loved this movie so much. And her whole family's like, oh my God, our mom's a killer, but she's our mom. And then just when you think it can't get better, Suzanne Summers comes in because of course, once again, John Waters is warning us, hey, Hollywood and celebrity are going to come in and, let's do a mini series. And Suzanne Summers is along for the ride and plays into the joke. And it's nice to see her doing that. But then, of course, Patty Hearst, like, I wish I knew the story of how she got into this, but somehow she makes total sense as a John Waters player to me.
Yeah. That's exactly what John Waters likes.
It's incredible.
Leo, do you have a final thought about Serial Mom before we
I kind of regret calling it a shitty movie now, but because the more we talk about it, the more I love it. But it's definitely one of my favorites. I think it's so well constructed, and in a way, it plays to all the bad things in movies, but somehow makes it good. And I love Kathleen Turner, and I think you pointed out this fact with every still picture that you guys are showing, it still tells a story, which is pretty unique. No actor can really do that with just boom, no movement. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this for today's shitty movie.
I thank you so much for bringing it to the show. Because it really is, and people who watch the show, they know this has turned into a celebration show. Like we can acknowledge it's a perfect movie. I think even John Waters would probably say, okay, not Citizen Kane, but it works. And there's some subversive stuff woven into a universal film. I think Todd said it really well earlier. This film is a microcosm of when it was made, the time period in which it was made. And so it's reflective of that. I mean, I wonder if, I don't know that my interns are going to be, what do you mean rewind what, right? Like they don't, we stream. So there are jokes that are really, really old.
Yeah.
But so it is of a time and a place, but I think it's super predictive of where we are too. So there's a thing that I think Waters was skewering about true crime and our fascination with celebrity and all this kind of stuff before it was cool, that makes this film feel very current in some ways and evergreen towards the future, because we don't seem to be able to get enough of it. I mean, I just tried to turn on Netflix. I was like, oh, thanks to Jeff Luce, who told me it was streaming for free if you have Netflix. And the first thing that I was being sold was Lacey Peterson. I'm like, this tragedy needs to stop. I don't, but it'll be the most watched thing on Netflix. I understand why they continue to do this. Like, how many Ted Bundy's docs have we seen? Oh, good, there's a new Dahmer doc, right? But here's Waters in 94 warning us about what happens and questioning who's weird and who are we really rooting for in our culture. And I think it's he's awesome. And I think it's a great film and a perfect one for you to have brought to us. I thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Leo.
I thank you guys for actually, through this discussion, I'm thinking about this in a new light myself. And although I'm already a fan of it, like you added to my understanding of a lot of things about it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Let's do our first ending segment, which is called Be Bad or Be Best.
Yes.
And Tracy and I, Leo, are gonna show you some movie titles, and we're gonna ask you to decide if it's so bad no one should ever watch it under any circumstances, that it can only hurt you, or
Right.
it's so bad it's fucking amazing and will make your life better.
Okay, cool.
I don't know what. Tracy, do you want to go first?
Okay, this is a new movie, so I'd be curious to hear what y'all think. It did well at the box office, which it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It was a sequel I'm not sure anyone asked for. Again, Twisters. Glenn Powell having his moment. Like Alien, the sequel becomes plural. Almost the same poster. A new generation chasing, Twisters. Thoughts, Leo? Be bad, be best. Did you see it?
I did. I love the first one so much that I didn't do it for me, and I was like,
Okay.
well, be best. I mean,
we-
which one is?
It's Be Bad is so bad people shouldn't see it.
I don't think it adds any value to the tradition of Twister. They didn't invent anything new.
I love that. Yeah, we've actually done the original Twister on this show, so I thought, it's fair.
Really?
Let's check in on the sequel.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? That's fair. I hear you, Dad Anderson. What do you think about?
It's a hard question for me. I mean, I'll be honest. I took my mother-in-law. It was her birthday, and she wanted to go to the movies, and she's like, "Take me to see Twisters," and I was like,
That's an interesting.
right.
Gotta do it.
"No problem." Took her to Twisters. For me, Twisters. It makes sense as a sequel to Twister. I don't think Twister is a very good movie. Twister is porn for CGI special storm effects. That's what it is. It really, and it's actually narratively built like a porno movie where you have this nonsense bullshit dialogue in between the fucking sex being storms in this case. And I love Bill Paxton. I'm not saying anything wrong about Bill Paxton, but the original Twister, the acting is kind of across the board bad, and the direction is kind of unhinged, and it sounds like he hurt people when he made it. What's her face Hunt certainly doesn't like him very much, but. I don't know. My mother-in-law walked out and said, I really liked it.
Good.
And I was like, did you like it as much as Twister? And she said, what's that?
Really? She didn't know it was a sequel. Okay.
So maybe it's probably Be Bad. I don't even want to begin discussing Glenn Powell. It's probably Be Bad. But my mother-in-law really liked it. So I'm like, maybe it's Be Best. Maybe it's so bad it's fun if you walk in blindly and you don't think about Bill Paxton or Helen Hunt or Philip Seymour Hoffman or
Brad Hasselhoff or
the guy from Spanking the Monkey. Just forget about all those people.
Sometimes you just need to get entertained. You know what I mean? It's so great. We went to my husband and I went to see Trap. Is that what it's called? The new movie with the
M. Night movie.
And I mean, what is this? What's that? I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. But then at the end, because it's everything he does, it's unbelievable at every turn. But then I have to say, I was entertained. You know, I mean, we watched it. It was entertaining to watch. So I'm like, okay, I guess it's fine. But
yeah, if you weren't bored, I mean, I do. To be honest, like during Twisters, there were times where I was thinking about other things, and that to me is the mark of a not great movie. When I'm like, oh shit, did I pay my cable bill? Oh, fuck.
Oh yeah,
I shouldn't be thinking about that.
I have to say, I came late to it. I didn't see it in the theaters. I streamed it like 2 weeks ago. I do like the Powell. I'm not here to say that he's Olivier yet, but I do think he has a presence, and I've been missing star presence under the age of 60 from the guy. He has that. I thought it was a fun popcorn movie. I do not think we needed the sequel, and it's just like it's one of those movies that, like, I didn't think we needed it at all, but then it made all this money. But I also didn't think we needed the Fall Guy, which I actually preferred to Twisters. And that bomb. So if you're just doing IP Universal, throwing it out there, it's again, I picked it because it's a Universal movie like the one we talked about tonight, just to illustrate Universal took 30 years to do a sequel no one asked for. Fall Guy is 40 something years ago. That also no one asked for that as a movie. Universal, that people doing Twisters and the people doing Fall Guy are not doing Serial Mom. So I just wanted to get your weigh in on it. I had a good time. I'll say Be Best just because Pal's easy to look at.
I think
It's
Fall
not
Guy,
the word.
Fall Guy falls in a different category if you think about it. It's such an homage to an industry, a sector of the industry that does so many amazing things. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
so that it does serve as that, and they went so out there with it that I don't know. I kind of appreciated that part. That I was like, okay, let's celebrate this kind of.
I liked it, but I grew up on shit like Hooper, so
Okay.
Hooper's the good version.
like,
Fall Guy.
a
Fall Guy's a
PG-13
TV show.
version. And honestly, the way the Fall Guy looked was a huge problem for me. It was too slick. It was too glossed over. There was too many computer effects and digital enhancements to the movie, and I didn't appreciate the stunts as a result. You know, it's like the very last Mission Impossible movie. There's that stunt that Tom Cruise really did, like rode a fucking motorcycle off of a giant ramp.
That too, yeah.
And then they CGI'd it to look like there was no ramp there. And the CGI made the whole practical stunt look like CGI. So I was like, what was the point of this exercise?
Right.
It's like you did a practical stunt, which is why we go to these movies to see Tom Cruise, who should be insurable.
Try to kill himself.
Yeah, he shouldn't be insurable, but he somehow is. And he does a practical stunt, and they make it look like it wasn't. And it's like, whoa,
great.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah,
I'll give you my Be Bad, Be Best. Here it is. John Waters, Pink Flamingos, starring Divine.
Yeah.
Be Bad or Be Best, Theo.
You're talking to a gay guy that will just love every minute of that. You know what I mean? There's just no escape after that.
That's fair. That's totally fair. So it's a Be Best from you. What about you, Tracy?
Oh, it's Be Best. And also one of the greatest taglines in poster art history, and experience in bad taste. Yeah. Like he's telling you up front, people who want to be offended, I'm like, I don't know what part you missed. You know, it's like he's promising this. And I feel like, you know, Divine, he's not meant to be for everybody. I understand if she's not for you, okay? But iconic, brilliant. Again, you had a director and an actor working together in a seamless collaboration for, in their case, multiple collaborations. And their films are still quoted and studied and talked about, and not just with queer audiences. And considering they had like about $5 to do it, I love the big swing. I love the I don't care if you're offendedness. And I love that these were folks that just had a lot of fun and a camera. And it's just absolutely his warped vision, and I'm here for it.
You know, the thing about it is I always tell my students, when you set your own rules, so long as you don't break the rules you've set, then you can do whatever within, you know, you can set whatever rule you want, and then we're on board, and then you carry me with that. And that's what he did with that. I mean, it's just like, you know, you told me where to go, and I'm going, let's go. And so that
I did I had a whole research paper I had to do in college, and I decided to watch people watching John Waters movies for the first time.
Really?
And I got an A on the paper. It was so much fun. This movie in particular, Pink Flamingos, I get it. Like, Divine eats dog shit. It's disgusting. It's nauseating at times. But if you're not charmed by a man using his butthole to lip sync the bird song from the Trashmen, Pa 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 Oh Mau Mau, like if that doesn't wow you, then nothing is going to wow you. It's amazing. He does with his butthole sings Papa Oh Mau Mau perfectly. I'd never seen anything like that before.
Right.
And
but also for some of us, when Ace Ventura Pet Detective came out and Carrie was doing I was John Waters did that 20 years ago, but cool.
Yeah, he did it with
I'm just saying, Points for points are due.
The bird is the word. Yeah.
Bird is the word, dude. John Waters and birds. Look what he does with birds and Kathleen Turner in this one.
Yeah. All right, let's do. Should we do the indie effect?
The indie effect. I would love to do the indie effect.
This
All
is
right.
where Tracy and I will present characters from movies that if they had not been in the movie, it wouldn't have changed anything.
Okay.
Um,
Tracy, what do you got?
I can't. This will be the second week in a row I'm picking on this film because I'm working through my anger and my rage. I'm gonna go with resurrecting Ian Holm, who's been dead for like 7 years or something. Not as Ash from the original Alien, but as Rook. In Romulus, which I would call Alien Ponderous, but that's they didn't ask me about the title. What I don't like about this movie, there's so many things, but I'll try to contain it to the indie effect, is that I and to be fair just to everybody involved, Ian Holm's family estate gave Ridley Scott permission, who was the producer of Romulus, to resurrect their loved one. So it's not like they did something. We just had a strike about this, okay?
Right.
So the family said, okay, we're going to let you reanimate our loved one. I may not agree with that, but if the family's okay with it, I'm not going to.
Right.
My issue is we have cast a black actor as a synthetic who is described as childlike and slow, who protects the white lady, but needs the white lady to save him. But the only time the white lady is not saving him is when the reanimated Ian Holm comes in and goes, listen to me, do the thing, blah, 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 villainous plot number 505. And then that just goes away because the white lady saves him with the discs. And so basically Ian Holm's like, oh no, come back. You're my robot friend. Now you're just the slow guy again. Nothing Rook does matters because at the end of the day, Andy, the synthetic person, just goes back to being the Ripley wannabe's bestie. And so there was a diversion for about an act and a half. Nothing happened. It happened the same. He's still with his girl. So he doesn't do anything except give us a plot complication that the white lady still has to save the black synthetic about. I hated it so much, not just the resurrection, but the stupidity of the arc. So yeah, I think the indie effect, because Rook, you see what they did? Because Lance Henriksen played Bishop in Aliens. Look, we're doing chess things. Anyway, here's also because Fede Alvarez doesn't pay attention to canon. Ash is a different model than Bishop. So they wouldn't have called Ash's lookalike Rook because he was the hyper A21A2s. They always were a bit twitchy, not Lance Henriksen. So
yeah, and
from the canon point of view,
the difference between another difference between Bishop and Ash is the actor who played Bishop is alive and available.
And that would have made sense. And we've already established, if we pay attention at the end of Alien 3 and 4, like Lance Henriksen is cast as a Wayland. And we find out that Bishop was made in his likeness. So to Todd's point, not only do we have a living actor who's fucking fantastic. Lance Henriksen can do anything, y'all. You can young his ass down like he's, Jeff Bridges in Tron Legacy Gesundheit if you need to, but you can still make him look like he did and he's alive. And it would actually make sense within the canon of the Alien universe. So you violate the canon, you got it all wrong, and it's a dumb plot point that just takes up 20 minutes of stupidity. So that's my indie effect, Alien Romulus. Second week in a row, I don't like it.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, Alien Romulus didn't offend me to the degree it offends you. I thought it was better than the last two prequels. But
that's like saying I like Ted Bundy because he made Law Play.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it was drowning in nostalgia, and that's why they did the Ian Holm thing. And I just, in general, I wish we could stop doing that. Let actors be dead. Let Carrie Fisher be dead. Yes. She doesn't need to be in the Star Wars movie. I'm sorry she died before you could finish the trilogy, but fucking don't reanimate her. It's gross and weird.
Same page.
I don't like it.
Same page.
What about you, Leo? Where are you on that?
I haven't seen the movie, so I can't comment on this, but I kind of agree with you.
Spoiler alert.
No, it's all right. I'm not truly excited about it, but I agree with you on the AI thing. It's just awkward. I remember going to a Celine Dion concert in Vegas, and all of a sudden she's singing with Frank Sinatra, and I'm thinking, a hologram thing, and I'm like, why? I don't. No, thank you. I appreciate it. No. So and again, it has such an impact on our industry.
Yeah.
To walk down that route, that you know.
And
but
to
to have
Todd's
it-
point, the great Lance Henriksen is available to work.
Yeah, he's just in Hawaii. Just call him. He'll come out.
Todd, what's your indie effect?
All right, my indie effect is this. This is a remake, a kind of directed by Quentin Tarantino, a World War II Nazi fighting sort of a movie. And I'm going to go with Eli Roth as Sergeant Johnny Dunowitz, also called the Bear in this movie.
That's right.
There's the introduction of his character is hilarious because you hear this banging thing and they're talking about the bear and how he'll kill every Nazi he sees, and you're like, oh, who's it going to be? And Eli Roth walks out of the cave and then doesn't really do anything for the rest of the film. He helps carve like a swastika in Chris Waltz's head at the end, but Brad Pitt didn't need him to do that. He could have done it himself. So I'm just saying there was no need for Eli Roth to be in this movie. There was none. And one of the reasons I thought of him was because I read a review of Eli Roth's new video game movie. What's it called?
Borderlands.
Borderlands, yeah. And both Jamie Lee Curtis and another actor were called out as being completely useless in the movie. And I totally believe that they are, but I was also like, well, he learned it from watching other people, you guys.
Oh. Oh my God.
Do you agree or disagree? I mean, are you?
I think Inglourious Basterds is such a powerful movie in so many ways. But every time I try to make sense of Tarantino's choices, go figure, you know what I mean? And I love him, but I'm in love with the guy. Like I'm in love with the guy, and so many of the things he does. But then again, when I try to understand my way around it, who knows why he wanted that character to do that, and so many times with people like him, you just kind of gotta accept the weirdness of it all and embrace it. But I get it. I think in the narrative, and that was already a narrative structure that was already so full of so much that perhaps another thing that was not needed in that respect. But then you go watch Kill Bill. Good luck. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. Kill Bill is a whole other thing. But Inglourious Basterds for me, one of the frustrating things about it was all these great introductions to Brad Pitt's crew, sort of Dirty Dozen crew.
Dirty Dozen style.
Which the original Inglourious Basterds is a spaghetti ripoff of. And by the way, has a whole scene where the American soldiers come upon a lagoon with beautiful blonde topless women, and they're peeping Tomming at them, and then it turns out they're a bunch of Nazis, and they take machine guns out of the water and they shoot at the American soldiers, and the American guys have to fight these Nazi ladies. You get nothing like that in Inglourious Basterds at any point, but you get all this setup like you will. Like all Brad Pitt stuff, indeed the introduction of the bear. That's the stuff from the original Inglourious Basterds. I was looking forward to being made with more money, and less dubbing. And it's almost lost in the narrative, the thing about killing Nazis, which was the whole thing about the original. And that's what's fun about it. It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it should be the easiest bad guy, Nazis. You shouldn't need all this nonsense, in basement bars and talking and, I don't know. I just thought, and if you're going to rewrite history, that's cool. Like, it totally worked for me in his last movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah. I don't know why it worked for me in that. Maybe it's just because the history of Inglourious Basterds was bigger, but like just changing history to have Hitler killed in a movie theater is like, I get the delightful element you're trying to sell, but I'm just not buying it. And beyond that, like, I went to Inglourious Basterds to see, naked Nazi ladies with machine guns in a lagoon. That's all I went for.
But that's the problem with when you remake something or you do something with that's about something that already had a voice, and so it's so hard to. And I agree with you. I think when it comes to Hitler, unless very few people are Mel Brooks that are able to turn Hitler into a musical star, a musical comedy star. Very few people can handle that in a way that makes a double jump and it actually works. It's not. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I think the reason why it works in his last movie, in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is because that turned out to be sort of like a love letter to Sharon Tate, and in that respect, the fact that he saves her, it's actually very elegant in a fucked up cool way with all that bloodbath at the end. But it's sort of like a really lovely way of moving out of that story by actually saving her. So I agree with you. It really landed in that movie.
Yeah, it's better wish fulfillment than that which comes in Inglourious Bastard.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Ty. I think that's a really good indie effect. I mean, you had me at "There's no reason for Eli Roth." So
I don't have disdain for Eli Roth. I like Eli Roth stuff.
I know you do. I like Thanksgiving. I can say that. I like Thanksgiving very much.
I don't want people to think I hate Eli Roth.
No, I don't.
I hated him in this movie.
Don't hate Eli.
He's not a very good actor.
Well,
so
he's
if you're
not.
going to cast directors, turned actors in your thing.
Yeah. My thing with Eli Roth, I don't think he's a bad director. He's clearly a very talented person. So I want to be clear on that. It's hard because Tarantino takes films that I grew up watching, puts them in a blender and puts it out in his own voice. And somehow I think it's original and interesting. When I see Eli Roth do the same thing, it's not for me. For some reason, I'm like, oh, you're just doing, Cabin Fever launched you, because I like Evil Dead 2 and 1. And so there's something about his that I don't feel
Tarantino takes exploitation movies and he sort of recycles them and makes them a little bit classier while maintaining the exploitation elements. But Eli Roth's whole thing, love it or hate it, is I'm making an exploitation movie.
But I also feel, I think, look, I mean, those guys are both auteurs and they can do whatever they want and like whatever. So that's good for them. It's rare when people get to do that in this economy. So I don't begrudge anyone that success, because God bless, because it's so hard right now. So I love that those guys have that ability. But there's also something that Tarantino, like he had said something on his podcast, and I got a little bent out of shape because, he started ripping on, Truffaut. And I was like, okay, I get it. But the problem is that a lot of your cult who follow you won't go back and watch Truffaut now. But the truth is, if you like Kill Bill, anybody out there listening, then he's really just taking Truffaut's The Bride Wore Black with the great Jean Reno, and he's literally putting it in a blender with They Call Her One Eye, which is an infamous X-rated porn exploitation film. And he's merging them together. And that's okay. I've seen both films. I know what he's doing. His cult will probably seek out those films and realize it maybe. But when he says, I don't like Truffaut, but I'm like, but like half of Kill Bill is really just Truffaut. And Truffaut's The Bride Wore Black was Truffaut trying to be Hitchcock, right? So if you're going to be an auteur, I just think you need to quote things. I think you need to not rip on Truffaut on a podcast because you sound cool. I think you need to say, hey, my Kill Bill is absolutely Truffaut doing The Bride Wore Black, which is absolutely Truffaut doing Hitchcock. And I'm doing it through my own lens, which he did do. And it's very successful. And a lot of people, it's their favorite movies. And I love that. But I don't like I created this and I'm going to shit on Truffaut part of that conversation. But I do think he does it better than Roth. And I think there's a reason they're friends. And I think Roth probably is a better filmmaker because he spends time with Quentin. I think those guys watch movies and they get inspired. I think maybe because I think they're both so talented, I want their films to continue to be better because I think they are very talented. This is just a personal opinion. I worked in a video store. I was a projectionist and I saw the same kind of exploitation films. I love them. So I get it. And I appreciate what they're doing, but I do think it's okay to quote and not be so negative about some of the stuff. That's where I get a little uppity with some of the interviews they give. And so I try to ignore what they say and watch their work, not what they say. And that I like.
It's an interesting point though. They're very talented, but what are they doing with that talent? It's a good question. I'm just going to leave that open. Let's do our boost. We're going to end on a moment of positivity. We're going to boost movies that maybe you've forgotten about, or maybe you haven't seen, or maybe we just want to say, hey, I like this movie. I'll start. Here's the poster. In this poster, it's just called The Applegates from the director of Heathers. In my area on VHS, because this did not come out in theaters in my area, it was called Meet the Applegates. This movie, Serial Mom, made me think of this movie.
Oh, cool.
Which is a really weird black comedy with this family of bugs that are disguised as humans. It's really weird, but I loved it at the time, and also Ed Begley Jr.'s fearlessness with nudity is inspiring to me. So, have you guys seen this movie?
No, I
I
have
actually
not.
saw this in the theater, believe it or not.
Oh wow!
Oh wait, what do we have? I want to boost Orphan Black Echoes. I hope it gets another season. I love you, Jeff. Yes to that. Yeah, I remember seeing it in the theaters. No, it was a test screening. It was a test.
Oh, you saw a test screening
Because it was. I think Burlstein Gray produced it or something, but because Lyman was at Burlstein Gray as a director at the time, because I was interning. But I remembered seeing it, and I do remember liking it. I feel like Michael Lehman does these, like, was it Airheads and like Hudson Hawk? Like, I actually really like his comedies, even the ones people think don't work. I think like Hudson Hawk, I actually think is quite good, and people need to like look at it again, get away from the press of its day and age. If you watch it today, it is as crazy perhaps as Serial Mom, also a big budget Hollywood movie. Dan Waters wrote that script, who wrote the script for Heathers that Lehman, so that's kind of connected. But yeah, I mean, you have Sandra Bernhard in a mainstream studio comedy, and Bruce Willis being really charming, and it's a real fun flick. But yeah, this one I remember liking, but I haven't seen it since. I don't know if it would hold up.
It is fun. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
You basically have to have an old VHS copy of it, which maybe I do. But yeah, if you can find it somewhere, I would say it's worth watching if you've not seen it. It's very fun. It's very silly and very dark at the same time. So yeah.
What was the title again?
It's called Meet the Applegates. The only poster I could find for it online just says The Applegates. I think they added the Meet the when they finally released it, so people would understand.
Soccer Training.
Yeah. All right, Tracy, what's your boost?
My boost, I wanted to stick with our star of the evening, the great Kathleen Turner. This was I believe, Hollywood Pictures or Disney attempt to take a best-selling series of novels about a female PI, V.I. Warshawski, with the great Kathleen Turner and the great legs on that lady. Come on now. Killer eyes, killer legs, killer instincts. This comes out in 91, so a year before Sharon Stone does her thing.
Critically hated.
Hated, reviled.
Across the board.
And it did.
Like back then, it would have gotten like 2% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Today, it will seem like Citizen Kane. But she is so flawless in her comic timing in this. And like J.O. Sanders is in it, and he gets to be kind of her male lead, and I love him. He's a character actor who doesn't get enough work, and I just love seeing him in that role with her. And she's great. Like in a better world than the one we live in, this would have been a film franchise that Kathleen Turner would have top-lined.
That would have been great. I saw it in the theater, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted more of it.
It has one of my favorite lines because, again, her comic delivery is so great. So, like, they have her tied up or whatever, and she's like this well-dressed PI, and they're hitting her, and she's got like blood, and she's like, "Do you know how hard it is to get blood out of cashmere?" And then she just fucking kung fu's and Bruce Lee's everybody, and you're like, "I love her so much." It's like, so she's like feminine, but like kick-ass.
Yeah,
and has this perfect comic timing that we've talked about this evening, and this was 91, so 3 years before Serial Mom, but it was that, like, she's still young enough to top line that first one would have worked, it would have been a series. That was the intent. And it's one of those that I'm like, God, I hate to see. It's a flawed film, but she's so good. You have to.
It's not great, but it's also not as bad as the critics said it was. I mean, this is
fun.
Just as good as any given James Woods vehicle of the era.
Oh, I'm gonna go better than that because she's a lot easier to look at.
No, absolutely. No, you're right. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying. I mean, like the critics, if they had thought about what they were doing, would have said, "This is awesome. There should be 10 of them."
This is one of the few pieces of IP that I wish somebody with money, because I don't have any, would option the books and do right. I mean, Kathleen was past the age of V.I. Warshawski now, but I think this is one of those that, if done correctly, launch a new star. Like instead of what was it? Oh my God, Marilyn, the much reviled Anna Armas.
Anna de Armas.
Anna Armas, yes, who I think is quite great. Like I the Marilyn film I can't talk about, but she's really, really good and really gutsy, and she's a really good. But her comic timing and the way that she was the coolest thing about that James Bond film she was in, and I think in Knives Out, she's with the big names, and she's the one we didn't know, or most of us didn't know when we first saw the first Knives Out, and she emerges. I'd like someone like that. If she has that sense of humor, that comedic, I think she does, based on some interviews I've seen. I think it would be nice to see her in that way. But someone like her doing a V.I. Warshawski, I would really like, and I think it would be a really cool series. But I'm just sad that it wasn't Turner's series, because she's so
Right.
cool.
No, I get that.
So
Yeah, it's a fun movie. Have you seen it, Leo?
I haven't seen it. I want to watch it tonight. Actually, I've been curious enough.
look at that poster.
Check it
Yeah.
out. Yeah,
And it's one of those movies, like, it's so simple, where like the running joke is no one can pronounce her name. She's like, V.I. what? V.I. what?
It's just a fun B movie. I don't know
Yeah.
why it was so reviled at the
He
time.
just stopped.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we should wrap up the show. Leo, is there anything you want to plug? I mean, first of all, when can people see the game? Are you putting it in festivals, or what are you doing?
Yeah, we're just starting to put it out in some festivals and see what happens. You know, the life of shorts is very different from anything else. So we'll and then eventually, hopefully, it'll be somewhere out there and people might watch it. But yeah.
Everybody who I know who's seen either the trailer or the poster is like, where can I see this? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Good marketing.
Let us know, Leo, where people can see it. We'll put it on our page.
Yeah, when
Great.
when it's in stuff, let us know and we can tell people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Thank you so much for doing the show, man. I hope you come
Yeah,
back.
no, it was a lot of fun. You guys
So
rock. It's
You
a lot
rock.
of-
Thank you.
I'm such a movie nerd, so a conversation like this is really fun for me anyway. So
Yeah.
I'll
Us
continue
too, that's
watching.
That's why we do it. It's just so nice to revisit these things. And, you know, as we're in this contraction in our industry and people are maybe a little more risk adverse than
Yeah.
like seeing these kinds of movies like the one you brought to the show tonight, it's so inspiring to me that like right now, I mean, I don't, not to end on a bad note, but you know, if anyone's out there with money, John Waters has Aubrey Plaza attached to his next script, the first time he would direct in over 20 years, and he can't get it financed. And I'm like, in a world, we can't get John
Aubrey
Waters
Plaza.
with Aubrey Plaza is a perfect John Waters player waiting to happen.
My God.
And they can't get it, he can't get it financed. And I just feel like it breaks my heart, because I know what I would love to see her get this kind of role, because you know he's written a humdinger of a role, and she's so fabulous that I think that's going to be a great movie, and hopefully someone will grow a pair and help finance for him, because he deserves
hope.
support.
Yeah. And I mean, that's scary if he can get a movie going. You know,
It's a moment, it'll pass, but I think again he does cult specific movies, and I just feel like, but if he's struggling, it just means we all have to be smarter and help and support one another's art and film. And you know, that right with you, Leo, it's like, let us know, we'll pimp anything you want on our page, you know, and come back again, please. That would be lovely.
It'd be fun, absolutely. It was a pleasure to do this with you guys.
Thanks for coming. All right, guys. Good night. We'll see you next time on My Favorite Shitty Movie.
Have a good week.
Bye.